4 to 6 feet gets you over here. Hits you on the other side of what's been dug out so that the water will run in the appropriate place and it doesn't drop it right at the base. You don't want to drop it at the base. Those are called footings. Okay, the cement part. The walls sit on the footings. When we go inside, you'll see when the floors get poured, we're going to go inside the next door and they're just doing the plumbing right now. The floor is poured after the fact. So the floor is poured, there will be a crack all the way around the outside because it doesn't seal, it's cement on cement, all the way around inside, and then they will try to seal that from the inside. But lots of times when people say my basement is leaking, it's seeping up from underneath this kind of stuff, and you'll actually, these basements are almost waterproof, but they're not 100% waterproof. So if you see that black material that's poured on the outside of that concrete over there, that is a waterproofing, and it will go down the wall and around the edge and down to the bottom of the footing. And then your weeping tile goes all the way around it, and then gravel is put on top of the weeping tile. And then everything is backfilled from there. They don't want to backfill until they get a bit of a floor system and support, because if you backfill too quickly, you will actually push some of these walls in and they'll deflect. So sometimes when home inspectors say the wall is broken, it's deflected in, when did that happen? Did it happen during construction? With wood walls, if you ever get into a wood wall situation, lots of times they backfilled too early and they put pressure in. What they want is the walls to stay straight, them to put the floor joists on, secure the floor joists, and then backfill in so you don't get that movement in the wall. It gives it that extra support. Okay? I think that's it for here. Let's walk around the outside of this building and we'll go into the garage then.
It keeps turning off, or it might not be on.
So obviously construction site, everything has to have railings. That's why you'll see the temporary railings set up. Watch the hole here.
There's the, whoops, sorry, weeping tile hole.
So if you were to strip away those walls, you're going to see 100% cement under there. But if you just stripped away this wall, you'd have seen this window butt that's in here. And that's a framed wooden structure that the window is now going to go into. Okay? And so they put that in there and they pour the cement around it, and then it's secured in there. So it's a permanent hole. If they forget, then they have to cut the hole after the fact. Pain in the ass, but you can do it. You have to use a cement circular saw to cut the hole, and then you put a frame in there afterwards. Because you need something for the window to get nailed to, so you need a frame there. Then what happens is they'll put a window in, and then they'll put what's called a blue skin. And it's a blue material that sticks like baby shit. Sticks all the way around, and anything that touches it, it sticks to it. And it goes all the way around and secures and waterproofs where the window goes around the window butt. Okay, and that's your waterproofing around well, how old are you talking? No, blue skin just came out in like 2000. So in the 80s they would have put some kind of tie backs or some kind of a wrapping system they would have put around there. It was not waterproofing, it was water resisting. And so again, you get some older homes that have water coming in the windows. Why is it coming in the window? Well, chances are it wasn't sealed with the new technology that they have now. So if you turn around that tie back wrap, so that kind of a wrap is what's going to go on the outside of this. They most likely would have secured some kind of tie back wrap, which is paper that they will glue or staple onto it, but it's by no means waterproof. These others are now, it's a rubberized coating, and it actually waterproofs around the windows, and everything is about waterproofing basements now. There's lots of new home builders that are increasing their warranty on new homes based on waterproofing, because the technology's got that much better in waterproofing. What is that pipe sticking out there, Janet? It's sweeping towel. Absolutely. So again, the better builders It's not mandatory to do it, but the better builders will put a weeping towel at the base of the window. They will put a window well, right? Like you see those window wells over there. They will put those on, and they will fill it full of gravel, and they will leave that, and they'll put a cover on it with holes in it, so that any water that comes to that window will go down that drain, into your weeping towel, into your sump pump, and out to the appropriate place. Because the other way, if you don't have those, the water sits there. And I've literally seen homes that you walk in and it's like an aquarium, where you're looking and you see the water level at about 2 inches above, and you're just like, well, that's going to leak. Eventually, that's going to leak. So again, technology and it costs more money, but not everyone does it. So again, kudos to North Australia and their construction. It saves the builder a lot of hassle. So it's a smart thing to do, but it's by no means something that gets done all the time. So look for that kind of stuff.
Can you add that later?
Yes, with a shovel, right? Because you now have to dig this out.
Yeah.
Go all the way down to your weeping towel, get rid of all the gravel, tie in a T section, put this up, build everything back up, fill all the dirt back in.
What if your house doesn't have weeping tile?
How old is your house?
40s.
It definitely doesn't have weeping towel.
Yeah.
Then there's no use doing that.
But you could still dig it down deep enough and put gravel at the bottom so that at least it wouldn't come in the window. It would potentially could run down the side of your wall.
And go in underneath.
Yeah, at that little crack you're talking about.
And that's because they didn't waterproof houses in the 40s. So when you get into the 40s, 50s, 60s, which is like Market Mall, most of the west side, weeping tile didn't come into the 70s. So you're talking like the college parks are intermittent. The Lakeviews, Lake Ridge, that's when weeping tile really got predominantly used. Before then, they didn't have it. So any of those older homes, they rely 100% on getting the water away from the house in the first place. And drainage is everything. So you can put weeping tile in after the fact, but it's got to go to somewhere. So now you're going to have to dig a hole, cut a hole into your basement, and get it into some kind of a sump pump or some kind of a reservoir somewhere to be able to push out. Because you can't hook it up to the sewer system like the old ones were. The old ones, like my house was built in 2000, and we don't have a sump pump. Our weeping tile goes directly to that sewer drain that goes out to the city. There's a cupboard in my furnace room, and if you look at the side, you've got the weeping tile comes out, it just drips down and runs right into the city. So if you ever pull that up, you'll see that's a lot of those older homes do that. That's also, this is the plug for Carrie Tucker, she's not here right now. That's where what comes out of? Radon gas. A lot of your radon gas will come from the weeping tile through that hole and then into your house through that area. So one of the first recommendations they tell you is seal up that hole that's in that furnace room where a lot of stuff drains into the furnace, humidifiers, water heaters, all those things drain into that spot in case of an overflow, but they want you to seal that up to prevent radon gas. No, never. If it was built before 1970, it will not have it unless they've redone it themselves.
Okay, but then we go to Stonebridge and then you see they all have the weeping towel.
That's not a weeping towel. That's the
Sump pump.
That's the sump pump extension. So a sump pump has to be brought, and sometimes it's to the backyard, sometimes it's to the front yard. I recommend front. Brighton is having a bit of a problem right now because they've been putting all theirs to the back.
But their mentality was they've made it so that everything drains.
Right. It's all about drainage. But the problem is, so a client of mine just bought a house there, and they're lifting 20 garages 6 inches higher than what they used to be because everyone's water is going to the back and it's then flooding into the basement or into the garage.
If they want the water to go to the sewer system, why are they coming down the back?
Because then it goes down the back alley, which is paved, and goes out the exit of the back alley and into the storm sewers up there. Because they don't want it to go out the front. I would rather go out front. I have another builder who's actually building over on Mahavir right now, and there's a house across the street. The sump pump does not turn off. You can see water draining. They brought it out to the front street. It's actually got a green slime to it. It runs 24/7, 365. The neighbor says all winter, all summer, doesn't matter, and it's just because it's just a steady little trickle, and it runs down in front of her house, and it's a little green slime, drives her crazy. But I said there's a bigger issue. To me, that's not a water level. She's got a break somewhere. in a water meter or something, because it should eventually dry it out. But water, they can, but they shouldn't be running that often and moving that much water. They're meant for, heavy storms and that kind of stuff, but the reality is eventually they'll break down. In a sump pump, you should always tell your clients to check your sump pump, even if it's dry. Pour a gallon or two of water in it and have it kick in, just to see, to make sure that it works. Because God forbid, if it doesn't work when they need it, their basement floods.
And a battery backup.
They can see, absolutely. And there's lots of them that won't turn on and will not be running for years. And then there's like a toilet valve. It's a little flopper valve that moves up and down. There's no water in it. It just sits down and it gets stuck there. And the water then fills up and it still gets stuck and it just doesn't pop up and kick in the activity for the
Like ours is bone dry, never runs. Our neighbors is one of those ones that runs.
all the time.
And when did those get
Sump pumps, just in the last few years, has been mandatory. Sump pumps. So when I first started in the early 90s, if you mentioned the word sump pump, people would say, I don't want to see that house. It obviously has water problems if it has to have a sump pump. Don't want to see it. Now when you look at homes, people go, where's the sump pump? If it doesn't have a sump pump, I don't want to buy it because it doesn't have the ability to get rid of water. So the mentality of sump pumps has 100% changed from what it used to be. So sump pumps are a good thing, but they require maintenance. It's something that, if you guys want to get on a calendar list with your clients, once a year put it down there to send an email out to them, make sure you test your sump pump today. Middle of summer, middle of spring, middle of whatever, fall before the snow, test your sump pump. Blow out your sprinklers. Like these kind of reminders, put your name in front of theirs on a regular basis, but it reminds them to do these little things. Cleaning filters quarterly, that kind of stuff. Great ideas for home maintenance is that it comes from you. So if you want to do that on your daily reminders, I think it's a great idea to do, but sump pumps should be checked on a regular basis, at least yearly, if not more often than that.
I just like taking a step back. Where are the piles? And when you say piles,
What are piles? Anyone want to answer what a pile is? Not the human kind.
And it has to hit bedrock or else it's just a cake, a toothpick and a cake.
Okay, so there's two kind of.
Oh yeah, there's just also screw piles.
Okay. So there's piles, which is the old piles, which is they come in with an auger, they dig a hole as deep as they need to go to get something solid. Because if they don't get to something solid, it's like putting a toothpick into a piece of cake. It just keeps pushing down until it hits the bottom of the pan. It's got to be on something solid. So the problem with those is they never dug them deep enough. What some of them tried to do is try to dig out the bottom and wiggle it and make it oblong so it's more like a funnel at the bottom, make it fatter on the bottom than it was at the top, and then they pour cement down with rebar in it. The problem is, it's still pushed down. So they would charge you $150, they would put them into driveways, they'd put them into all kinds of different places, and they realized it really didn't work. If you're on acreages or if you're on land, they will be directly underneath the
Footings?
the grate beams on the garages, yeah, but underneath the footings of the house, if you were to have come here before they put the grate beams on, you'll have seen where they would have put the piles. Depends on the engineer's request, but they're probably going to be every 6 to 10 feet, depending on the soil, depending on the height of the house, the weight of the house. It's a structural thing, and they all come to the blueprint, and then they'll do that. Okay.
You can also have wood piles as well that they actually pound in. On a lot of commercial properties, that's what you see when they come in with those big post pounders.
Oh yeah, they did that next door.
At the neighbor
So that's what
property.
they
Yeah.
do. They pound them down until it's so much weight drops so far, and it only goes down. The post goes down so much. It's considered set at that point. So it's not like on anything, but it's the friction of the post in the dirt that then holds it. And it's the engineers have it all calculated out.
And that's mostly used in construction, in the commercial construction. The newest technology is what's called screw piles. So screw piles are like an auger, except the flighting is much farther apart. So it actually doesn't dig the dirt out, it worms its way in. And so what you do is you leave it in the ground. So now you will screw it into the ground, you will disconnect it, you'll pour some cement over top of that, and you will leave it there.
Well, and inside too. Normally they're hollow.
Right? So now you've got the weight of it underneath, you've got the weight of the dirt inside, and there's less likely for it to push down, so there's more resistance for holding weight. So screw piles, and if you see them, they'll, they probably wouldn't be using screw piles for the but I mean, some of them are 10 to 20 feet long, so depending on, again, how deep you're going, how heavy the building is, the engineers will tell you how many feet of screw piling you need and how often.
Is it typical that they use those mostly in your land?
That's definitely that's where it came in the first place, but
Now they use them everywhere?
now they're using them more and more because they become cheaper,
Yeah.
and they're that much better than the old-fashioned tile. So if you have walkout basements that has a deck above, and if they use the old traditional piles, you'll see the basements, because not only does it sometimes go down, sometimes it gets pushed up. As the ground freezes and thaws, sometimes it actually pops them up. So if you do a lot of walkout basements, you'll look at the decks will actually be tilted towards the house. And why is that? It's because the pilings have actually pushed the deck up and tilted it back. Deck should always be away from the house, at least an inch or two from front to back. And if you're ever level or up, that means that those pilings are pushed up. They should have screw adjustments to them so that you can then bring them back down again if they're built properly. But screw piles, more and more are using screw piles for that reason, because it holds it more and it's not susceptible to the freeze and thaw. Remember, we're in Saskatchewan. We get plus 40 degrees and we get minus 40 degrees. One of the most severe weather changes in all of the world happens here. So we have different construction than most other places. If you go to the States, a lot of the places, they don't put basements in. They're just on slabs. And the houses don't move. You don't have to. You can't. Because they're 25 degrees every day. Right? So it's a much different system. Okay? This is called a deck header. So this is where their plan is to put a deck, and so that will be put on ahead of time so they can get the vapor barrier in behind the tar paper in behind, so that when they do the tar paper, they can tie it together. Okay, and then they'll put a patio door in here, and obviously a big window there as well. Those 2x4s there are just safety, so that when they were putting up the walls, the wall didn't fall over and they didn't center. Whereas if you down. And then everything will be tie wrapped or tie wrapped. You see the tie wrap there, and that will give it its weatherproofing. Or some of them now paint it with a paint that is a rubberized coating. You'll see that build up as well. So come look at the technology out there now. Okay. Ready to go to the next way?
What's that green box?
What is this green box? Does anyone know what this green box is? We have two green boxes here. This one here, electrical.
Should say so.
Watch for wires, soft power. Okay, that's electrical. Every 4 houses will have a box. Okay, so you'll see the next one up there and 4 in between. These green ones are for cable services, telephone, internet, etc. goes into here. Not as critical. But what is this line all the way through here?
Property? Oh, yeah,
It's an easement. So if you see something as to why, you're like, why can't you build something on the last few feet of a property? It's because these lines are all pre-done ahead of time in here. So obviously there's going to be a back alley in here, right? And so these areas have to be left in case you need to be serviced.
So they couldn't put a garage just on the other side of you, like, or a shed?
Nothing permanent over top, no.
Like these are going to be in this guy's yard? This
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
So when you say nothing permanent, what about a concrete slab for like a
That's
hot tub?
permanent.
That's permanent. So you can't
Yeah.
put like a hot
Well,
tub right
so
here.
you can't put anything permanent or it'll get destroyed. If they have to get it, they reserve the right to remove it. And if it's over a gas line, you can't put a roof structure because in the event that gas was to leak, it would be trapped in the roof structure, and if you turned on a light switch, it would explode. So no garages or permanent structures with gas lines under any circumstances. And if you built it on anything else, if they were to get to it, they would destroy your garage, do what they need to do at your expense, and with no compensation.
Not a vented here?
Sorry?
So you could vent it. You vented the shed.
Permanent structure you cannot build over top of a gas line. Nothing can be built over a gas line. then it's not permanent. If it's built on a cement floor, then it's permanent, right? But nothing permanent can be built over there. So when you get gas, anything that has to do with gas line, when you get a gas line locate, if there's any building over top of it at all, including a movable shed, they're going to say you're going to have to move that shed. Or you can move the gas line.
So that doesn't change, because I've had houses where they put in, they have to have the shed. There's one in Montgomery. And they said as long as there's a vent in the shed,
Yeah.
And it's not
I
powered.
think I definitely
So if it's a temporary,
Look at all the nails on the ground.
I would not be telling your clients, oh, don't worry about it, you just have to vent it, because I don't believe that they would get away for that for the most part. They may get away once in a while, but the majority of them are going to be no. This is just a fiberglass box over top to raise this up so they can get at it.
So this services that side as well, clearly, because there's none on that side, that's why the garage is over there.
Isn't this a little close to the house? Like, what is
This way is actually, yeah, but the house is actually pushed back more than anything else.
like where would their yard end? They're just gonna have,
Well,
and this smack in the middle of it.
it's on the side of it, yes.
It's
Like here's the property stake. Here's one of the back corner property stakes right here. So they do not have much of a backyard here. Right? And so again, when you're picking houses, if you're building from scratch, you look at where these boxes are and who's going to give you bigger yards and stuff. And now, wasn't it you that had the ones on Facebook where you can put
The big fake rock.
look like a big fake rock and you set it over top of it, and then it's already movable, right? And you wouldn't be able to do that over a gas line, but I guess there's no gas line boxes per se. So, yeah. Okay, are we good?
every full house has one of them?
Correct.
How about the cables? Every one house has?
Nope, this will be every, well, sorry, this one will actually service 16. These will do 4. So there's more of these in the big one.
Yeah, this is an extra one, hey? Usually common,
Yeah.
more common is this one.
Oh, for sure. These, you'll see these quite often.
But this
and
one,
again, don't if it's in the backyard, don't panic about this one. This one's it's a non-issue, right? These, on the other hand, some people feel that there's health concerns because of the radiation of the electrical coming through these. So some people will not buy a house if it's got an electrical box. So you need to know the difference as to what you're advising as to what that is. This one, and it's like, you know, it's like the people who don't want to move into a house that has a ghost, right? If they don't like it, they don't like it. They need to make that choice. It's not up to you, it's up to them. So you tell them what the electrical box is all about, and if they say, oh, that's not a big deal, okay, let's move on to the next. Some people will just build a fence around it, allowing room for the people to get around it for servicing, and then that's a part of the backyard that they don't use. Put gravel around the outside and let it go.
So the cable is also rather they're high voltage cable.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have the power that this does. If you actually look inside of these, it's mostly coax cable, telephone cables, internet, Wi-Fi, that kind of stuff. Okay. Okay, let's just go to the side here. That's my neighbor. So gas line locates. When you get a gas line locate, always look for where the meter is, because the meter will tell you where it ends. Now you got to figure out where it started, right? So I can only assume the gas line came in from the back alley. Can't guarantee it, but it most likely did. So most likely this gas line here goes from here and goes backwards. Okay? When you get gas line locates at homes, and the people are saying, geez, I wonder if I can build a garage here. Find out where this is. If it's off to the side, there's a good chance it goes from that side directly back to the back alley. But if it's in the middle of the deck, in the middle of the house, it may have gone on an angle or it may have gone straight down. Then you don't know. You can't have a gas line or a deck built around a gas line without access, and you can't bury a gas line over anything permanent. So you can move a gas line. It's cost a couple grand to move a gas line. So if you wanted to build a garage there, you probably still can. It's just that you would then have to get a trencher to come in, trench around your garage, reattach it to the gas line there, all at your expense. So, and I did it. When I lived on Riel, we built a garage right over a gas line. and we just moved everything out. At the time, it only cost me like $600 to do it, which I thought was outrageous, but you know, we paid $90,000 for the house, so times have changed. So yeah, so it's going to be $1,000, couple $1,000 depending on how far they got to go, and everything's at your expense. So it can be done. It's just a matter, and like a lot of people say, can you do this in construction? Pretty much anything can be done. It's just a matter of this, right? So you've got all your services here as well. So you see you've got A and a B suite. If you want to know if the suite's even got a chance to be legal, first thing you look at is whether it's got 2 meters. If it's got 2 meters, then there's a good chance it's a legal suite. If it doesn't have 2 meters, there's still a chance it's legal, but there's less of a chance. Especially the newer ones now, they have to have their own their own electrical. They have to have their own heat source. They can share water, sewers, but they have to have their own power source. They have their own heat source. Now, most people are putting electrical heat into the basement, not a furnace or anything, and then some of them will do a air exchange system down there as well, and then just a window air conditioner. Basements don't traditionally need air conditioning, so you don't see a lot of basements with air conditioning. Everything else is for servicing upstairs. Okay. Yeah. This is internet cabling, and some of these are blanks. So some of these are just empty in case for future stuff that they'll be able to fish it and run it down to the main lines into the back services. And there's no meters here because this has not been powered up. There's no electrical here. Okay. Let's go to the view rack.
Lugging around with Gary's tripod.
Okay, has everybody found everybody again? So now a couple different technical terms that we're going to talk about. So before we talked, this is now what's called a grade beam. Grade beams over garages. Okay. Do you notice anything different about a garage versus a house? Garages are 2x4 construction. Houses are 2x6 construction. When did houses change to be 2x6 construction? 1980. If the house was built before 1980, you may get a year or two where people started to play around with 2x6 walls in the 79 range, but 1980 on is when the building code changed and they had to go 2x6. But garages were allowed to continue to be 2x4. You can build a 2x6, it gives you thicker insulation. You can get away with 2x4s unless the roof is more than 10 feet tall. If it's more than 10 feet tall, if you do a 12, for example, it will have to be a 2x6 wall instead of a 2x4. And that's really not really important to you guys other than it's an insulation issue. So a 2x6 home is not necessarily stronger than a 2x4 home, but there is much more insulation. So 1980 was all about energy. We were trying to save and conserve energy, and so that's where a lot of them, that's what happened is they went from 2x4 to 2x6. That gave you from R12 to R20 for your walls. So a new home now is R20 walls and R40 ceilings, and now they've even upped the ceilings to go to R50 because they want more insulation to try and save on energy. One of the things that you see here, and it was a good one that we got, is a lot of bonus rooms over garages now. Bedrooms, bathrooms, whatever it is, over top of garages. The one problem with the early years when they started doing these is that it was cold underneath the floor. Why was it cold? Because people got the idea that all they needed to do was fill that full of baths of insulation and it kept their floor warm. The problem was in minus 40, once it got cold, it stayed cold and it wouldn't come out. They couldn't get the cold out of there. So now what they do is they actually will run a duct into here. They'll build a false floor. So there'll be a floor that will be built approximately 2 feet lower than what you see right now. They'll insulate that bottom one, but they won't insulate the top, and they will actually shoot hot air from the furnace and heat up that cavity space underneath. Always recommend, if they got a bonus room of any kind, to insulate their garage, and even better yet, their garage if they ever get cold floors, because that will help. Everywhere else has a basement under it that allows it to heat. And so that's why you don't have problems with heating floors inside your house. But inside garages, this is an open space. And when people leave their garage doors open in the middle of winter sometimes for 4 hours because they forgot to close their door and they wonder why their master bedroom's cold, I can tell them why it's cold, right? So you won't necessarily know if there's a floor space in there other than looking for ductwork in the basement and tapping on it on the floors. If you tap on it, you'll hear a bit of a hollow sound. You'll know that would be is what they're doing. So these are load bearing, obviously. You see that this picks up this weight. So this is all about the engineering. So you've got a tech beam here. So there's 3 beams nailed together, and it's being held up by these 6 2x4s. Okay. There will be a screw pile or a pile right below these load points. There'll be a pile in that corner, and there'll most likely be a pile right under where Lynn's sitting as well, and right in behind where Rebecca is. So the corners pretty much always get it, and then depending on where the load is for the house, they will be set there as well. Same as the pads in the basement will be placed based on the loads and the walls on the main floor and the second floor. It's all about loads distribution. So wherever the weight's coming from, it moves into different spots. Okay? And then of course, this is what you'll see as an attic access right here. And then now the newer technologies, they have a sealed unit that they can put in there and actually latch it closed. A lot of the old homes, it's just a piece of wood sitting there loosely and you can push it up and down. The amount of heat that is lost through that is tremendous. And over years, with humidity, also you can have a chance of getting mold. And that's what happened in the East Heights house, right? So they had an attic access in their house that wasn't sealed properly, and over time, when you lifted that up, you installed the area, and there was a chunk of coal this big, and it developed on the roof. It was easy to fix. Called in Brothers in Crimes, they cleaned it all up, took samples, everything was clean. A couple $1,000s later to fix it. Now, the important thing is to have a seal around there and to have some way of securing it. On the old ones, what they're recommending is take a piece of angle bracket, put a screw into it, and then put screws in to suck it down to hold it. And some will even put caulking around there, because the chance of you ever going up there is pretty slim. So again, sounds smart to your clients. These are some things that can help them. It's not necessarily new, but it will help them save energy and prevent any issues of going up into their attic. Okay. Any questions about a garage?
This false floor that you're talking about, so I see the attic hatch over there. Did they put another one in the false floor?
No, you won't be able to access it at all. No. It will be a solid floor. It's only going to be this big by the time you make the 2 by 6s. Okay. Let's see if we can talk inside the house.
Thank you. Sir?
So the electrician is Greg, he's my neighbor, Majestic Electric, in case anyone cares. And his son Paul is probably slacking off somewhere around here too. Anyway. So structure, let's talk a little bit about what's behind Janet right now. So that is a wall for cabinets, for kitchens. You notice the difference of what that wall is and how that's built. Okay, it's 2x4. How can they get away with 2x4? Because it's still, so 2x6 is here. This is still a 2x6 spacing, but this is referred to as a staggered wall. So why do they do this? Close, insulate behind the cabinets, right? So the reason hard surfaces transmit heat and cold. The reason to have insulation is a break between hard surfaces. So by putting insulation here, but by attaching your cabinets here, you're keeping your cabinets from actually connecting to the back wall. In the old style of cabinetry, they would be right to here, and you'd have your cabinet connected to here, connected to your outside, connected to outside. And so the cold comes through and your cabinets would actually get cold. This is the way of preventing that from happening. So again, not all builders are doing this, but this is something that you have to look into. Now, in behind Kyle is a recessed wall for a fridge. Again, more and more builders are starting to pick up on this because fridges are getting bigger and thicker and they're sticking out farther and they stick out too far past the cabinet. So some people will not have that recessed area and their fridge will stick out into the kitchen a lot, and you'll look at it and you go, well, this is just dumb. Yeah, well, they didn't do a recessed wall. They didn't think of it, or they didn't want to spend the extra money to get it done. So those are good technologies that are out there. Obviously, we've got holes here. There's going to be an island here with some plumbing in it, or some electrical in here, so they're going to be running stuff in here as well. Question?
How do you tell if the venting is outside from cooking from the stove?
So a range hood?
Yeah.
So the first thing to do is look at the range hood, open the cabinet right above the range hood, and on the older ones, you'll see a pipe that comes up and then goes out. The newer ones will actually have a pipe in the wall.
So you can't tell.
So you wouldn't be able to tell for sure. But what you would do is you would turn the fan on
Yeah.
and see if it's blowing out through the vents there. And if it's not, it's going somewhere. So chances are you would have piping going in and down. It will
Down.
never go up,
No,
right?
not
Because
up.
cold air goes down. So it's going to go down, and it'll usually go out at a very short distance away from there. So I would look on the outside of the kitchen, right by the fan, and see if there's a vent hood there. Turn the fan on, and I would touch it, and then you'd be able to tell for sure it was in there. The newer ones can be hooked up to the air exchanger as well, so you might have to look for that as well. So there's different options for doing that. You'll see with the air exchangers, there'll usually be a vent like in the side of a cabinet here, or there, or somewhere up high, and that hooks up for ventilation, for air circulation within the kitchen as well. Okay? Headers. So when people talk about can we move walls and talk about structure and stuff, and they refer to you have to have a bigger header. So this is a header here. Okay? This carries the load of whatever's above it. This can be, well, depending on how thick it is, at least 8 feet or bigger across. You could put a window across this whole back end if you wanted to. You'd have to have a very thick header, and you'd have to have very good weight support, and it would have to be designed. You need to have make sure your pilings are under there. You need to have your weight supporting all the way through there. So when people ask you, do you think I can take this wall out? There's so many variables on that. I don't know for sure, but yes, you can, but it's all a matter of this. How much money do you want to spend? And do you really want a wall of windows? Because remember about windows. Insulation for here now is R20. The best window in the world is R7.8.
Is that like a triple pane?
Triple pane, argon, gas, the whole shebang, right? That's the best insulation value you can get out of a window. So windows are always the weakest point for insulation in a house. They are drafty and they are cold, because a dark house is actually a warm house.
And would you say, sorry, it was a R what?
In a window, 7.8 is the best one that's out there right now. So remember, you got R50 in your attic, you got R20 in your walls, 1980 or newer. You only have R12 in your walls before 1980, and then you've got windows. So when you've got those sliding windows, those kind of windows are horrible, obviously, because they're very drafty and they don't block air. It's about making sure that there's no air coming in. And anytime you have like glass windows that you can just pull out, there's drafts going through there. So that's not an issue, right? That's just not even an option. Okay. Those need to be replaced. Those if you're losing energy, you're losing, like that's why those people put paper or the plastic around the windows to keep that air loss going out. Because your furnace might not ever shut off on some of those old windows. But people have to understand that. If you're in the city park area, the 100-year-old homes, the insulation in those might be paper, it might be sawdust, it might have started up there, but now it's down to here because it's settled. I refer to those as Pandora's box. You don't know what you're gonna get when you open that up. And I've had clients who've opened up in their bathroom in City Park and their insulation stopped right here. And they were wondering why it was so cold in the bathroom all the time. Yeah, it's gonna happen. Old homes are not as well insulated. They are character homes. They have lovely environments and all the rest kind of stuff, but they're not a well insulated home. The more insulated we get, the other problem now we get is we don't get enough fresh air into a house. So that's why air exchangers are much more important now than ever before, because now we are sealing these houses up like never before and we're not getting fresh air in. And for if anyone knows anything about radon, one of the things you can do is continually run your air exchanger to give you fresh air, which helps, doesn't eliminate, but it helps on the radon side of things as well. So anytime you can be getting fresh air, if they've got a large aquarium, if they've got a hot tub in the house, you need to have that air circulation all the time, because you don't want wet, moist air sitting inside a house for very long. Okay? Yes, it costs money, but believe it or not, heating the house is not the most expensive appliance for natural gas in your house. Your water heater is. Furnaces are now 90+% efficient with air exchangers. Water heaters, the best ones are into the 80s. Lots of them are only 70% efficient. And you use way more gas heating hot water for laundry, for showers, for dishwashers and everything else than anything else in their house. So your natural gas bill is as much your water heater as it is your furnace. So when people say, oh, I need to change my furnace to save gas. You need to change your water heater, you'll save as much or more gas at a fraction of the cost. Because you're looking at $5 grand for a furnace, and you're looking at maybe $1,000 or $2,000 for water heater, right? So you gotta look at what they do. And I mean, ideally, you do both at the same time. Your dishwasher is the only appliance in your house that runs hot water only. So you tell them, as far as if they're asking about their water heater, you know if your water heater is working, whether your dishes are coming out clean, and whether they're coming out streak-free. And if it's too hot, you'll be melting the Tupperware, and if it's not hot enough, you will not get them clean. Everything else has a mixer. Everything else has a hot and a cold tap, except the dishwasher. So again, it makes you sound smart when they say, this is how you do this kind of stuff. Great. Any questions about this so far?
What's the major differences between air exchanger and HRV?
The word.
HRV and air exchanger.
Yeah, they're the same thing. Same thing. Just a different word.
On the data.
Different
Yeah.
words. Kleenex, facial tissue.
So why do they have both on the data?
they do.
I know. Because
Can we check both then?
I wasn't on the forms committee. I mean, there's heat recovery pumps. So I mean, there is that they may have been referring to at the time. I don't know. But anything that exchanges air is a box that's in your furnace room, and those are the air exchangers. Okay. Heat recovery is much the same type of a device, and for most part, no one will know the difference. What else do we want to talk about? Some pumps, we'll go downstairs and see, because they're going to install a sump pump and see the basement downstairs. So let's go upstairs first. I'll do it. See what kind of trouble we can get into upstairs.
No.
After you.
After me in the
Are you
recording.
recording still? No.
Yeah, well, I think I missed it in the beginning. Because I was like, how does he keep turning it off? I know, right? Well, that's why I'm not turning it off now. Just carried it
Oh,
around.
is it recording right now?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Okay, so if you notice, the tubs are already installed before the doors or anything else are here. You know why that is?
Because they're